Greetings, sisters and brothers. So we continue the conversation. Before we begin with your questions, we wish to give some messages to the channel. It is our opportunity to say it in a clearer way versus an experience and put it into words. There is a certain matter when you deal with it from a human level that is a tool that is more capable on a human level to express it than versus sending the energy of intention. To begin, we are intentionally leaving the messages for the channel in the beginning of the session because we are putting the information out there straightforward and without hiding it. Oftentimes, as humans, or so you believe, you hide your troubles. You hide what is not going right. And you seclude yourselves on all levels, mentally, emotionally, verbally, and in being. But when things are going correct, and you feel comfortable with your life, then you are in, so to speak, everyone's face and being loud and proud. Our point in this discipline is that each equally need to be out in the open. All of you have troubles. All of you struggle to understand the words that we say. And all of you struggle with your own lives and its intended meaning. And so we give the messages openly to show the trouble the channel has. It's also keeping a recording of his growth as time goes on, to be able to see the evolution and how the process behind the scenes actually work. This would be of a greater magnitude of help to humanity than any book on truth, of actually watching the issue unfold and be grown past and how that person achieved it. So our messages for the day. The first topic we stop on is Reiki. He was more affected than you know when the class did not occur. And so in his mind, he went back to things his physical teacher that taught him Reiki had said about how the lessons need to be condensed in a weekend, simplified, so that others can understand it. And so, in a business sense, you get more bang for your buck. Because you move more through quickly, you have more students. You have more students that have been certified. You look more successful. Others will speak of you, and you could speak through them as a Reiki community. In the physical world, there is a logical sense to this. It makes sense. Yet, despite that issue of him considering that she was right, take the teachings and condense it into a weekend, because at least people will complete the course. And as he said in his mind, I can't even complete it if I gave it away free. Our instruction to him is to not divert from the path he has been given, to teach it in the structured way that he has been taught through us. There is a purpose behind it. In the time coming for humanity, and it is something that many are seeing now, just because you need medical help has nothing to do with the fact that you can afford the medical help. There is a time coming where this will become more and more prevalent. not because something is going to happen, but because this is a natural manifestation of what the minds of humanity are creating. It is the physical outcome of the energy that they hold. And so medical treatment will not be so easily reached. And if it is reached, it certainly will not be of the quality needed because of time and money. A horrible position for humanity to be in. Our efforts and what is of importance to meet those needs is that in the local communities on the planet, that healers are present. Not just ones that can shoot energy and let it be, but are adept at understanding and interpreting what that energy is and being able to hear its instructions, to learn to heal. The point of the lessons and the time taken is not to be able to channel the Reiki, but that by the time the student leaves, they can hear the instruction of the Reiki. It is impossible, no matter how long the cost, to be able to give instruction for every single disease type, every single malady in the body that can occur. There is only one thing that can teach that, and that is in the field and experience. It is in valuable importance that the student is able, in that moment, to not just connect to Reiki, but receive instruction from the Reiki. To be able to work with those who are here to work with you. And they may not be able to bring in information about the person's life, their relationships, their finances, what they are trained to bring up and to be able to work with is information and understanding of the energy structure before them. So that when the time comes, they can be of service to those in need. So he is to continue the instruction as he has been given. That does not make the opinion of shortening it wrong. It's a matter of intention and goal. What do you hope to accomplish? Numbers? Butts in the seat? Or a clarity of vision of what is to come? And this has been shared, this information. He knows this. Have faith and do it the way you were taught. And we begin our conversation.
Good afternoon, Ná Theial. Thank you for coming in today. I am excited. I do want to talk about the body, but first I want to ask a very mundane and selfish question. Both the channel and I have had an off week with regards to focus and quote unquote productivity, and things have been accomplished, but everything seems disconnected. What are some good tips to come back and really focus when the mind is scattered or the energy is so all over the place it's hard to focus? Some tips from Spirit.
A very good question. The first thing is determining the source that is scattering you. Allow us to give some information to explain. There are moments when your body chemistry is off. It's not astrological. It is not something you ate. It is the cycle of the body on what it is doing. Remember that your body, the cells die and regenerate every so often. When this occurs, you're not in peak receptivity. You're busy going through a process, a cleansing. And so there are times just with your body alone that you move with that flow. And that's how you focus the scattered energy, is by closing down the outer perceptions and your connections to without, to flow with the energy within, to be at peace with it, to move with it. There are other times there can be astrological aspects in play, that while you are aiming to walk across the room, the energy of the astrological aspect is pushing you to that wall. And again, acceptance. In what way? What is the energetic perceptions is trying to get you to see? What is the flavor of the push? And so you tune in to become at peace so that you understand the flow. If you are in a river caught in a current, panicking does no good.
Mm-hmm.
Intending a will against the river does no good. At times such as these, the wise person understands the flow first and foremost. You understand you're in the water. That is why you're panicking. Because you're in the water and don't have control. So you understand the flow, and then you understand how to angle where you're going to take advantage of it. Flow with or against. Your intention was to go to the far bank, but the flow is pushing you very fast downstream. You're not going to reach that bank. So you have to take your eyes off of that bank as a target and now perceive and change accordingly as you flow down the river to get closer and closer to the bank, angling yourself to find a safe place to land, to know when you need to push to reach that, and to understand your energy reserves because you're being pushed around. It would not be wise to spend all your energy trying to reach the mark you will not reach.
Mm-hmm.
Let it go and adapt. And in this way, it is still a tumultuous time. But there is a sense of flow, a sense of mastery, one that will need to be adjusted as it flows. And when you understand the energy in play, you understand its lesson. The third topic with this, of energies that you cannot control. And in this, we want to bring emphasis, because this is going to be occurring more and more on your planet, which is the disruptive energy of the human group mind. You create this world in mass, and your pots are beginning to boil over. Societal issues coming up in one place and immediately affecting all others. Humanity beginning to understand that despite their pride in disconnecting themselves from the web of life, they are still very much connected in finance, in communication, in societal terms. And that what you do to one end of the web immediately affects the other end of the web. And now you mix in the fears that is constantly being uploaded into that group mind, now becoming manifest. There is not enough. It's us against you. You don't belong. And like a mirror, all of these situations are manifesting on your planet. And so while you go through the day of your daily plan, there are those disruptions as well. And by disruptions, we mean that you can't control them.
And that's like the panic at work is all over the place. Even though I'm physically not at work, I still feel disjointed as a result of everyone else's disjointed and jumping around. That kind of connection?
Correct.
Okay.
You are part of the group mind of that building. We spoke about this in the book Finding the Inner Self. That group minds are very particular. While they're all connected and add to, they have flavor. A business has its own group mind. Inside that building, there's a set of expectations for employees to manifest. And if someone decides to cross that line and go outside the zone, they are not just targeted by the business, they are targeted by the employees.
Yes.
And it's either change back or be ejected. And so within that group mind, if it is in a panic, and notice the power of that unspoken agreement, you are not even in the physical building, but yet you're picking up and being affected by the mental and emotional choices of being by those within it.
And I catch myself every once in a while behaving just the way they are, even though I know it's not healthy. And it's like waking up from a trance sometimes. And I find it funny when I tell them set boundaries for yourself. It's like I never said anything to them and they completely ignore them, or that I spoke a foreign alien language. It seems like what's obvious to me is alien to them.
And we ask you, what is in play now compared to what was before the panic began? And all the physical things occurring. Are you disappointed in your expectations of the panic and fear of what is wrong? Understand, we light a match and we set a newspaper on fire in this room. It is easy to put the newspaper out, but how easy is it once it catches across the carpet, the couch, the blinds, the walls, and the ceiling?
Great analogy.
At this point, everything is on fire. Your words. Understand the energy behind it. And understand the hands of how many people in that building lit a match and then intentionally lit something and watched it grow. There is nothing to be disappointed about there. You could see the physical manifestations of the fear. One after another, after another, after another, despite all the good intentions of trying to do the right thing by upper management, by having a clear plan, by attempting to roll out common sense. And here is one of the things fundamentally within businesses that occurs all the time. Everyone says that the higher you go on a chain of command, the less effective you are for that order as it reaches the bottom. Now look at it in a symbol of energy and understand the inner meaning. Here we are, as you would say, in our ivory spiral, looking down at the confusion below. And we say, we have an idea to solve this. It's simple, it's straightforward. They're going to love it. And so we take this idea in practice and in principle and bring it to the ranks. This is where we stop and examine what just occurred. We looked from our perception at what we were perceiving, modulated a frequency, and sent it into that section to resolve the issue. But as the idea travels and gets closer to the mark, the truth of the matter is the energy becomes denser and denser. So does that modulation of frequency reach the core like it was intended? No, most of it bounces off so that it becomes practically negligible and ineffective.
Modulating that frequency, cast it back down, it's completely different. It won't harmonize.
Correct. Which is why it needs to be done from within upward.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's within the density. But your leadership structures is that command comes from the top down. It would be a wiser choice for businesses to have a position within the issue that are their antennas to be able to take the idea and broadcast it from within the mass. Versus thinking, I can broadcast it from here. And the common misperception is that the business leaders once were in the pit, as you would say. And so they remember their experience and their effectiveness during that time period. But they have not realized they're no longer there. They still think they could be just as effective, because if they don't, it's a matter of their worth.
Okay.
It is not a matter of worth. It is a matter of properly using energy to communicate. If they were to apply the position of the antenna that was in sync with their wills, and hear how, in human terms, absurd this would be. This would mean that the person in this position would attend the same level of meetings as the person in charge. And that the meeting would not be about, well, blah, 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 of the person in charge dictating their will and explaining to them about the who, what, where, why, and when. But it would be an interaction of, this is what we want to accomplish. How do we do this from your end? Okay. So if I understand you correctly, the policy is this, 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 and this. Okay. Now we're ready for a meeting with the managers. And your job is to hold them accountable to those standards. And the policy of checking that standard makes sense, is logical, and would work on your end. And we will have daily meetings on this subject not to hold people accountable, but to see how well we are doing, to lift that vibration versus trying to direct that vibration.
It seems like, as you're describing it, that's what they're doing, but they're missing the element of, all I can say is resonating and being accountable. It's, hey, these ideas work, we'll force a structure because it sounds right, but it's missing the element of resonating. It's still got that sense of us and them as opposed to we. So it seems like they have the physical or the structure set up, but there's that lack of resonance between the two. So it make what you said really has me see things differently in a more sympathetic, I think is the best way I can describe it, term, and that I'm not as upset with management as I was a few minutes ago.
Good.
Yeah.
Understand the point and perspective. It's not successful because the antenna is not properly tuned. For example, it is Ná Theial's company. Immediately, 3 factories over, Ná Theial doesn't mean anything because that energy is not within there. They're not working in Ná Theial's company as a being. That's just a name on the building. And the wills run amok. There is a certain point of perception within a business. For example, because often people take this out of spiritual terms, and it really isn't. If you are to be a student of Reiki, and you are now going to have students of your own, should you be sleeping with your students? Should that be commonplace practice?
My initial response is no, but then I don't know why no.
Because what is the focus? If we were your teacher for Reiki, our focus is to help you fine-tune to make Reiki energy a perceptive thing, something that becomes a real experience, something that becomes real, something that becomes your own personal relationship between you and it, and that your faith and trust develops in that energy so that you trust it when it flows through. Not only do you trust it, you trust you that it is flowing through. Those are the basics of being a Reiki teacher. And the trick is, the commonplace is to get it accepted on the mental level, and the rest will take care of itself. But that teaching has to travel through the emotional level, the physical level, and connect to a state of being that goes beyond that body. Beyond the body. Or Reiki does not become a real experience. You point and shoot. You point and shoot. And while Reiki will continue to work through the person regardless of their conscious awareness of it, there is nothing like a fine-tuned instrument. Will the will and the receiver become one? It is like a laser, focused and ready to do a job. There is a difference. Now, in between all that, we throw in, let's have sex. we just triggered your entire emotional body. We included how many past experiences of this life, and for that matter, how many experiences of other lives. Does he like me? Did he say that harshly? Is he favoring me?
Mm-hmm.
We will use our son for an example. He made the error when he was a supervisor within Friendlies to become good friends with one of the waitresses. And it put him into an unfortunate incident, one where he had to really struggle to make the integrity call. Because the waitress, when she became comfortable with being good friends with him, started bullying the other waitresses. And why wouldn't she? Do you know who I am?
Mm.
I'm personal friends with the assistant manager. I'm not lifting bus pans. You do that. Don't tell me what to do. I'm favored. Now, these human ego issues come up all the time.
Really?
It's shocking, isn't it? And it's always at the level of acceptance that they come forward. In a human relationship, it's normally at the point when the person finally realizes that the other person really does like them, that the storefront falls. And we say storefront because they were busy selling something.
Okay.
And once they realize sold, then they go outside for a second and wheel in their luggage rack and start opening up all the suitcases.
That's why a beautiful relationship can go sour after marriage relatively quickly.
Correct. Because all of these issues should have been worked out before marriage was proposed. Because you did not give me all of you. I've seen the best. Now I want the rest. How can I commit myself to you if you are not being real? But the person does not understand that, and they buy what they see in the storefront. Hook, line, and sinker. And then go into a huge shock once the luggage rack comes in and they open up their issues. Mommy issues, daddy issues, he abused me issues, fears that I can't put a physical reason for. And they float around the room like deadly moths. Yes, we use that example for a reason. So, our point to you in bringing this up and finishing the story, when he caught dissension among the waitress staff, because no one would come tell him that this was occurring. And as our son would say, did you really just try that game with a psychic? He began to become aware of the waitress staff no longer connecting to him and taking a step back because he was no longer trusted. Why was he no longer trusted? Because she was using him as a weapon. Who hugs a bomb? So at this point, he noticed a disconnection. It was no longer based on, I'm telling you to do this because this is the right thing to do, and I have just as much sweat on my brow as you do. So just get it done. The next phase was the little complaints. And then came the point when she overrode his will. because she put people on brakes when they were in the middle of a rush. The lobby was packed. And everyone was doing what she said, and not him as the manager. What to do, what to do. Do you talk with her privately and ask her to stop? Do you confront the situation? And he chose the hard road because he needed to win back the loyalty of his staff. And so he casually strolled up to the board, saw them in break, and said, "What are you guys doing on break?" "I didn't set this board, who did?" And immediately everyone froze because he was addressing the elephant in the room and pointing right to it. And no one wanted to answer. And in his usual subtle way, he stated, "That was a direct question. Answer me. Who set this board?" He already knew the answer. And the waitresses said, "Roland, set the board." And he responded and said, "What does this name tag say?" "This line right here." And they said, "Assistant manager." And he called Roland over and said, "What does her tag say?" And they said, "Waitress." And he advised, "Then you were mistaken for following her direction because she doesn't have a title to give it. That is your mistake. Please don't do that again." And he turned to his best friend and said, "You ought to clock out and go home. We have a meeting with the manager tomorrow to discuss this." And his second friend, that was piggybacking the situation, when she spoke up for the girl, he said, "You too." And they were flabbergasted. And keep in mind, the two girls, one of them was his best friend, and the other one he was in a relationship with. So he sent his girlfriend home and his best friend in front of the entire staff. And because he chose that course, loyalty was instantly resumed, and he was back being in charge. Because he did not ask permission to be in charge. He declared he was, and then gave out consequences for breaking that chain. Now, our point in bringing this up to you, because there was a point, is that when dealing with energy of this manner, it all depends upon your intent and clarity with it. How much do you deserve? And it's always the same thing. This is what I'm intending. This is my direction. These are the people that are interfering in the way. How much of yourself are you willing to sacrifice for their acceptance of you? is the rare person that will say, I'm willing to get rid of all of you to have myself completely. Nothing else matters. But as that light shines through me. And that is a piece of foundation that we will build upon in other sections when we arrive to it.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Now, we did kind of drift from the general question, which Spirit often does because it's hard for us to just look at one little aspect when we see so much more.
I figured, and it's really interesting to see that what we do doesn't just affect our immediate, but there's so many other factors that it affects and affects it. Kind of like being very interconnected with everything.
Correct. And that is what you are here to learn. How connected you are to everything. Though we don't like this term, because what's implied when we say it in your words, but your enemy in this regard is your belief that you are not connected. And that you don't deserve it when it does occur. You question it. You challenge the validity of it. Never a fear that you accept wholeheartedly.
That's the whole, for me, I've been getting the theme lately of how destructive doubt can be. It's useful as a scientist, but outside of that, it seems like it's very destructive.
There is a difference, to clarify your scientific use of that term. In science, when you doubt, you are not emotionally connected to that doubt.
Mm-hmm.
It is a hypothesis, and one that you are attempting to explore and prove true or false. And there are times that it's a great tool to try to prove it false, but usually that comes after you have successfully, or so you think, found something true. But your first initial phase is to find something true, to have something to disclaim,
Mm-hmm.
something to investigate, something to poke, to prod, to test, retest, come at it from a different angle and see if you get the same results over and over and over again. But it's not personal. Self-doubt is very personal and is emotionally connected. The two are not the same thing.
Beautiful. That's really liberating, is the only word I can think of. It's like I can breathe.
Now here's the aspect of the observer self we bring to your attention. In the exercisers for observing yourself, it's encouraging you to take an impersonal stance with it, to simply observe, so that you don't have the emotional investment on what you see. Oh, I just said that in conversation because there was a doubt about myself. I said it, and the point of origin from manifestation of that entire conversation was a twinge when they were talking about something good that happened in their life. It was a quick twinge of, that makes me worthless.
Mm.
and off the mind went with mental and emotional constructs, and you can watch it form into an entire conversation to tell them how good you are. And in every conversation, there is a point of who's holding the energy, who is supposed to speak, who is getting the attention. And you choose to take that moment of, instead of expressing a truth, you express a lie. A lie in hopes it's going to make you feel better about yourself. And this you build into your outside persona of who you are. And then you wonder why you're afraid of it and other people seeing it. Because it was built on so many lies, you don't even remember what they were. Now, the observer self observes these things impersonally and compassionately. That's the difference. Impersonally and compassionately. And so we go through the scenario again. And whoops, there was the emotional impulse. Up comes the who, what, where, why, and when. And you say it. And you can almost feel the disinterested energy from your friends because they know what just happened. And you become more uncomfortable. And then, oh, I know what I just did. And for the first time, instead of a plan to stop it, a plan to observe it so that you can stop it, instead of calling off the therapist to make an appointment, you in that exact moment recognize it and have a moment of compassion for yourself. Because, not because you need to heal, but because you've forgotten yourself. And you connect. And it's okay. It becomes okay in that moment. And now we play it through again. The twinge comes up in the next conversation with different individuals. And the who, what, where, why, and when starts. And you begin to speak and you say, no. I choose not to poison my image with this energy. I choose not, excuse us, a word is escaping us, pollute, thank you. Pollute the energy of the moment with my friends. And you could see it build up in the person and they, no. I choose not to do that. And again comes the moment of compassion. Next round. Whether it be the next day, the next conversation, or a couple of months down the line. Someone's talking about the goodness of their life, and you feel that twinge that I'm not good enough. And in that same moment it occurs, you say, baloney. I stand in my awareness. That is not true. Compassion. And the energy that caused the rift itself goes, what did you finally do? You didn't clean up the mess. You didn't stop yourself while you were making the mess. You actually healed the source of the mess at its source and dealt with the fear. That includes that state of being. We won't call it exactly emotions, it goes deeper. Emotions is how you feel about who, what, where, why, and then. Which means that it's joined with thoughts. That had no such conditions.
Mm-hmm.
It was a response of feeling inferior. And that is the source of the pain. That is why you create what you create. And that is why your life exists as it does. And this, we would say, is learning to observe in the moment. The moment creation begins. All of this was a reaction to that one flash that contained so much more information. And in its own sense is the true reality. The rest was the lie that you created. Even if you were talking about things that are true, even if you did not exaggerate one bit, it's the intention. You were setting up a premise of how good you are to sell to other people.
Mm.
Because when you can see that reflected and a sense of jealousy in their eye, you proved it wrong. But it never does quite leave, does it? The ghost still haunts, echoing forever within, whether in this life or the next or the previous. There is that core of what you truly believe about yourself that will need to be addressed when you're ready to look at it.
Just like whatever troubles you have at work, you still carry with when you go out with your friends, you still carry when you come home, you still carry when you go to class. They're all different lives, but there's that core that you carried from work. Something happened at work.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
If you are feeling insecure at work, you feel insecure at home.
But it may come out as opposed to being a yes man at work, it may come out to being aggressive at home. It's still that core insecurity. It's just expressed differently.
Let us explain it to you this way. You are playing Destiny 2.
Really?
And again and again you fail. Over and over and over again. You cannot succeed to get past the board you were on.
Are you going to give us a strategy to beat the game?
No. So, at this point, you've worked yourself into such a frenzy that you feel you can't play the game and are frustrated. It is too difficult, too hard. And so you say, as they would say in Brooklyn, forgot about it. And you throw in another. Let's use Final Fantasy. And you get to a boss fight. And you fail again. And you can't get through that board. And it becomes too difficult. Does the emotions that are there from Destiny 2 of that frustration kick in with Final Fantasy? and pick right up where you left off, or because it's actually different games, does it build a whole new experience of frustration level?
It could be flavored differently, but it's that same core.
Correct.
Of can't do this.
And that's our point. It's flavored differently. So how does that feeling of frustration and failure flavor in a relationship? It could be one simple thing, one statement. You left the dog out. It's about the dog. It's about the house. It's about the relationship. But what is the emotional content to color that situation pulled from?
Yeah, the feeling of being irresponsible, which I'm working through that.
Why we're poking.
And I appreciate that because it was really a big bugaboo. And looking at it the next day after I slept, I was like, I really over exaggerated, but I think I still beat myself up over it.
But here's the thing. You do much work to protect your image by seeming responsible, by being responsible, by being known as responsible, by buying things that is responsible. Responsible, 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 responsible. In this one situation, there was and is no defense. The truth of the matter is, it happens to more people than they care to admit. A moment of forgetfulness, a moment of losing track, and the door closes and the dog is still outside. In true sense, it's not a big deal. It could have been a big deal, but the odds were in your favor. She did not wander. It was nighttime. She had no need to. She would not have. So, coming back to center, our point to you is that you spend much of your energy building up this image of responsibility instead of sitting with the fact of going to the source and healing what actually needs to be healed, which is your sense of worth. And this is cultural.
Whew.
We're going to give you a insight. In your culture, as a family structure, mom and pop are talking about people, places, and things. Who do they praise and who do they appreciate? Now, we're going to put the way, the limitations, and their thoughts and emotions and what they value aside. Because, as our son would say, that is a wet bag of cats thrown at you. So put that aside and deal with just one thing. They show value. They show respect. And they speak highly of those who are successful, those who have their life together, those who are organized, those who have a plan, those who have emotion. Oh, they're going to school. They're going to get a degree. They're going to become, afterwards, they accomplished that and now they're doing this with their degree. Let's talk about the Smiths. and how they're getting that new house and going on vacation. How they're adding an extension onto the house. You grew up around a table as children with your parents speaking about other people. Again, not the intricacies of their wet bag of cats, on things that they valued that you would not value, and judge them for now, not the focus. The fact that they valued them, and what aspects did they value them from?
What was being presented.
What was being presented of the image to uphold.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, not just with mom and pop. What about the culture as a whole?
Mm-hmm.
Who gets praise and who does not?
The doctors and engineers.
And those are titles.
Mm-hmm.
What are the descriptors that come before the titles? They did this, they're doing this, they're setting this up. What is it that you think that they're describing? Success, organization, purpose. You need to be like him. What did the parent just tell the child? You need to be like him. How often have you heard that?
Yeah, not just from my parents.
Correct. So did we not just say, so we can respect you? See, there's that comma there.
Ah, the unsaid conditional acceptance.
Correct. It's not, I value you now. But you need to have a plan to become successful like this person so that you are protected, so that you can enjoy a certain level of life, so that there are options available to you as tools to give your life purpose, because it will enrich you.
And the whole, even if it was I value you now, it would be I value you for now.
Exactly.
And that sets up conditions, which I can speak from my experience of, okay, even if they say they value me, I have to act, do, behave in a certain way to maintain that value, because regardless of whether or not they meant it was conditional, I interpreted it as conditional. And I'm not special in that regard.
But understand, when we say culturally, it certainly was meant conditionally, as a training tool. Make no mistake about that. Our intent with those words were clear. It was meant that way because it inspires the child in an unhealthy way, which is the only way they knew how to get you to move, to accomplish those things. Did you accomplish those things for the purpose of those things, or did you accomplish those things because you were under the whip of trying to meet those expectations for approval?
Oh, it explains why the floor beneath me gave way when my father passed, even though it was I hated him at the time. It was, what motivated me was showing him how successful I could be. And with him being gone, I didn't have that motivation anymore.
Correct.
That's really insightful.
Our son had given you an interpretation during that time period which really came from us. We will review it with you once more. The issue when your father passed and the psychological breakdown that occurred directly thereafter was from an energetic push-pull. Your two energies was constantly pushing and pulling on each other. And that defined your relationship. Approval and unapproval. Approval and unapproval. Love, hate, love, hate, love, hate. Responsibility, despisement of that responsibility. A constant flux of expectations, you accepting those expectations, and then you walking away. Hear us when we said this. Walking away, which will explain the time periods of you outside the house to get away from them.
Ha!
And then processing that energy out, realizing with clarity what was really said and what was really meant, going back into the energy and having it reloaded. And then doing the cycle all over again.
Well, that didn't work. Let me try it this way.
And it was a spiral that you were actually on. And every time you came around to the same point, you were slightly closer to accepting the grand truth. But what did not occur was the full realization or breakaway. And like two planets in sync, constantly pulling each other, going around, one winks out. What happens immediately to the orbit of the other?
It's completely thrown off. There's no center.
Energetic shutdown.
Woof! Powerful.
And so at that time, you seeing yourself out of the body was you actually deciding whether or not you wanted to stay. You almost left. You almost decided to give up this body. Because without that push-pull energy and all of the issues that happened directly thereafter, the response was, I didn't sign up for this. Oh, hell no.
Was I like, eventually, fuck it, let's see what happens?
You cannot escape your karma. And so you spent time with your higher self, receiving clarity, receiving healing, receiving instruction, while your body was there. Your chakra systems had collapsed. The rage you experienced and expressed was all of that on the spiral. At that point of managing it and coming to the point of releasing it, we will use that line from the song, I was a stick of dynamite. It was just a matter of time.
From Nightbird, was that her name?
Correct.
Yeah.
So in this situation of dealing with that energy, and this is what we come back to get to point, we keep asking you, so what did you do wrong? Do you have degrees?
Yeah.
Do you have a good paying job?
Hell yeah.
Do you have a home?
Oh yeah.
Is there any major issues that would be a societal blemish upon this home? Besides the front flower beds?
No?
No. So,
by the way, I love you, Ná Theial, and how you bring these very mundane little things once in a while. It's very refreshing. It helps me connect with you even more.
it is important, our goal is to be able to speak to it on a level that you can actually accept and deal with, which makes it real to you, because this is about you. It's been about you. That is the point of this conversation. So thank you for being open and allowing it to be shared in that format for others to peek into your soul.
It's a way to help others. You probably know, I've been trying to, as much as possible, figure out how I can contribute to the world to make it better, because I think a lot of it comes down to people feeling shitty about themselves, and I'm not completely free of it, but I it's been easier and easier to feel really proud of myself. But I mean, everything we're talking about has triggered a lot of stuff, but I don't feel like I'm spiraling out. I feel like it's more clarity, but these are just emotional responses. And if this helps other people get through whatever, I am more than happy to. I mean, I am ready to get beat down and pulverized. I feel like parts of me have been ripped out just now, but it's like getting gangrene out of me.
Actually, we're not done with the ripping.
Oh, perfect.
So back to point. So you have everything that your parents would have valued. Is that not what we heard? Did we mistake that?
No, I had everything.
So then why does Monsieur not value? Your parents would. Why don't you? Why do you still feel as if those accomplishments are nothing? And understand, we're not talking about the work that you've done mentally and emotionally in your physical life to be healthier with those things. We're going back, and often when we converse with people, they confuse the two here. And they think we're attacking the physical accomplishments. We are not. We are going to the source of the pus, if you will, and say, why has that not been cleaned out then? If all of this physically was supposed to bring you worth, then why is that not automatically resolved? It should have been logically. You have all the things physically your parents valued, drilled into your heads of what you're trying to accomplish. You have even had your father come from the other side and say how much he regretted what he did, and to tell you he values you now. You should too. Hasn't touched it. So what have you done wrong? When will you forgive and let it go? When will you accept that it's there, motivating and moving your life? And from that, as the source, the filter in your creations, it corrupts everything. How many things do you try to set up and do only to feel the same way? And then wonder, how, why, what do I need to do?
Halfway through the day, almost every day in there.
Correct. It's because of the filter you look through. You are still not living your life. You exist to not feel that. You exist to paint over it. You exist to cover it up. that is a choice.
Whew.
And now, before we end,
I wanted to before do you and the channel have energy to continue for a second part?
we can, but we do need a break.
Yeah, I do. I need a break.
Because both bodies must relieve itself.
Yes.
We have been fidgeting.
I have been too.
Held back the energy long enough, so we will break.
Perfect.